I'd like to thank everybody for coming to what is one of the final sessions in TechEd 2011. Thanks for gracing us with your presence here. We're going to be going over Microsoft Forefront end-to-end protection for information worker business today. This is SIM 326, so hopefully you're in the right location. My name's Frank Trujillo. I'm a senior program manager with Microsoft. I've been probably working on Forefront technology, which is what we're going to discuss here, for about 4 years now. My colleague, Mitch Hall, is here joining me and is going to be doing some more of some of the specific demos. And he's also in Forefront and has been for maybe longer than I have, yeah. So if you have any questions, I'd recommend you come up to a microphone so everybody can hear you. And if we can't answer your questions, my other recommendation is, if you have something right on, go ahead and tell us what the question is if we couldn't answer it, and we'll make sure we get back to you. All right? So the objective of this particular deck is to provide everybody with a pretty good understanding of what Microsoft has to offer from a protection technology suite. And we're really focusing on the new stuff that's been introduced in 2010, and we're also focusing on the key workloads that are associated with Office. So that's going to be the context. So in the end, hopefully, it answers all the questions that you have, and we'll basically go through some demonstrations to basically back up some of the content that we display. The other key thing is that if you happen to really pay attention, I'm going to be asking some questions at the end of the presentation, because I have some knickknacks to give away. Anything from stress relief ball to a little webcam and so forth. So I'll ask them if people can get it right. I'll throw you guys a bone. All right? So let's get started. So the agenda for today, we're going to have a brief overview of the Forefront protection technologies that are associated with Office. We'll then go into what's available for secure messaging. We'll then take a look at the capabilities for secure collaboration, what we have available in Forefront for the management experience overall, and then we'll end with tying the Forefront products that we've discussed to the actual licensing capabilities. What do you have to buy to actually get those? This was a big question, I think, that has existed within TechEd. For a lot of the booth duty that I've handled, I've heard repeatedly the same kind of message. We have this appliance. We just found out that we have eCal. We have Forefront that we get for free. We're spending all this money. We're actually going to do something about it and start to evaluate the potential replacing, an appliance or another competitive vendor. So, very interesting on how that's played out and how that's basically matured over the last several years. So Forefront for Office. So the big thing is that we'd like to align the protection technologies with probably two of the biggest workloads in Office, specifically Exchange and SharePoint. So from the Exchange perspective, you have Microsoft Exchange, which gives you the on-premise email capabilities. And then you have Exchange Online, which basically gives you those same capabilities, but in the cloud. To align with that, we provide Forefront Protection 2010 for Exchange Server, which is also known as FPE. That can be installed on several of the different Exchange server role servers. And then we have Microsoft Online Protection for Exchange, which internally to Microsoft we call FOPI. Now, some people like to call it FOAP, but I can tell you right now, internally to Microsoft, we call it FOPI. And so what is the ties with this? So it's actually interesting that, FOPI can be used in a standalone scenario, and that the information can be driven into your own on-premise environment, whether that's Exchange or not Exchange. All Exchange Online customers actually leverage the Forefront FOPI technology to perform some level of email hygiene. So if you're a BPOS customer in EDU, if you're a corporate customer that is purely in the cloud, some level of capabilities will be flowing through FOPI to provide you a secure email hygiene. So as we go through SharePoint, there's the two SharePoint offerings that are available today is of course Microsoft SharePoint for on-premise installation, and then we have Microsoft SharePoint Online, which basically does the same thing but in the cloud. The corresponding forefront protection capability that we provide is Forefront Protection 2010 for SharePoint. This is known as FPSP. So by default, this definitely protects your on-premise SharePoint installation. And you can configure everything associated with your web front end to make sure that it's secure. How this is tied in with SharePoint Online is that SharePoint Online actually uses this technology as well. But it's not exposed to the end user. So the tenants can actually go ahead and configure the FPSP functionality as it exists with SharePoint Online. They can do on their on-premise installation, they cannot, but the same technology basically protects both. So to round out the other product offerings that we have, we do have Forefront Security for OCS. This product is pretty much, at least the UI piece of it, is based on the 2007 technology. All the 2010 technologies have been upgraded. We also have Forefront Protection Server Management Console 2010, which is the multi-node management solution. And then associated with FOPI, we also have an exchange-hosted encryption offering. This encryption offering leverages our third-party Voltage and is able to provide end-to-end encryption capabilities for your organization. It is also managed through the administrative interface for FOPI as well. What's not shown here is Exchange-hosted archive, which Exchange is currently coming up with plans for how that's going to be migrated into the next version and what's going to happen there. But you can we'll also show you a little bit of exposure to Exchange-hosted archive. So on the slide, we want to point out 3 additional ways that Microsoft technologies from a protection standpoint are differentiated from the competition. So the first one is comprehensive protection. So comprehensive protection at the very first means that we have multiple engines that are participating in our protection capabilities. So whether if we're talking about FPE, FPSP, FOPI, there are multiple engines that we leverage to do malware detection. All right? With multiple engines come the inherent capabilities that we have diversity. So diversity in technologies that actually do this malware detection. So some of them are heuristic-based, some of them are pattern-based, some of them have the new fingerprinting technology. So you get a diverse set of vendors that provide different capabilities to the party that work collectively as one to provide your protection. And then the other paradigm is the multi-layer behavior. So even from a spam's perspective, we have multi-layer capability in the sense that we have IP reputation, we have protocol capabilities in backscatter, and then we actually analyze the content that's coming into the organization through a content filtering spam analysis engine. All right, so that's a layer. Another perspective of the layer would be in an Exchange deployment, we actually have the edge server, the hub server, and the mailbox server that we protect in an Exchange enterprise deployment. As mail flows through, you're allowed to go ahead and configure different protection capabilities as the mail flows through, somewhat on the edge, something on the hub, something on the mailbox. And I have an architectural slide we can talk to a little bit more about that. So that's kind of the comprehensive protection side of the world. The integration or the tightly integration with Exchange and SharePoint, this is all about understanding the roadmaps of Exchange and SharePoint, knowing where they're going, and being able to go ahead and protect their offerings. And so we believe that we're in line with that. The hooks that we integrate with are tightly integrated, and then you have the ability to basically put the product out on the release cycle. So as soon as the next version of Exchange is released, you're going to have protection that's available with it. Finally, simplified management. So we have, of course, management capabilities on all the products that we offer protection-wise. From FOPI perspective, there's built-in administrative console that gives you a vast variety of management capabilities. We'll take a look at that in the demo later. We also have server management capabilities in FOPI or in FPE and FPSP that does the Exchange and SharePoint server management. And then on-premise as well, we have the newly introduced FPSP or FPSMC console that actually does the multi-server management of the Exchange and SharePoint protection workloads. All right. So when we talk about anti-spam and anti-malware, if we look at the three main products that we've been discussing, FPE, FOPI, and FPSP, we pretty much have the matrix covered from antivirus, anti-spam, and anti-spyware. If we drill down into how those are covered, we can see that from an antivirus perspective, we use 5 engines for FPE and those same 5 engines for FPSP for SharePoint protection. Now you can configure that to have 1 to 5 different engines, protecting you at any given time. From a FOPI perspective, you have 3 engines that are doing your AV for you. So the only thing I want to point out here in addition is that FPE and FPSP, the Exchange and SharePoint on-premise products, are built from the same framework. They share the same technology. What's different about the two is that they hook into the workload at different points and are basically associated with different workloads. But the underlying technology and the infrastructure is the same for FPE that it is for FPSP. So for the most part, both of those will be fairly equivalent. The distinction comes in when you're talking about FOPI. FOPI has, when you're talking about on-premise Exchange or SharePoint, you're talking about servers. When you're talking about FOPI, there's no more server concept. Customers could care less how many servers we utilize in the cloud. What they do care about is their domains and making sure their domains are protected in a way that they can go ahead and configure them. And so that's where the technology differs between the on-premise protection capabilities and in the cloud capabilities. So for FOPI, you have a lot of regex information that's provided to the customer. This regex is leveraged in the determination of spam. It's also leveraged to go ahead and create custom rules for your policy. And from that point, you have basically the same other type of things that are also available on premise, which is the IP reputation capability, your connection filtering analysis, and so forth. And if we go into anti-spyware or anti-spam a little bit, I wanted to really emphasize this point. The anti-spam capabilities for FPE 2010 have been greatly improved. All right, and what I show here in this box are basically 3 pieces of information on how they were approved. So number 1, we actually added backscattering capability to our anti-spam functionality. So that was basically a must-have from that perspective. The second piece is that we've improved our IP reputation or our connection analysis piece by going ahead and adding additional external and internal RBLs to our IP reputation offering. And then the third piece, which is probably one of the more important pieces, is that we went ahead and changed engines. We now have CloudMark as our spam content filtering engine that does the spam analysis for us. So you combine those 3 things, I would say we've done a great job in improving our overall on-premise anti-spam offering from 2007 to 2010. Filtering capabilities. Again, I would say that we're pretty much green across the board, with the exception of the Edge from a SharePoint standpoint. And the only reason we call this out a little bit differently is that the Edge in these terms are really referring to spam and transport filtering capabilities, although you do see the forefront technologies for SharePoint living on the web farm. So that could exist in a DMZ situation, but we're not calling it out as such. So Edge, keyword, regex, file type filtering, attachment and scanning filtering, all pretty much those capabilities are all available from the products. The one thing that I would point out, in taking a look at the different technologies that are leveraged to do the work, is that the big difference between FOPI and FPE here is that FPE actually digs into the attachment for keyword filtering. All right, so it'll go ahead and take a look at the keyword filtering, basically parse that out, and go ahead and evaluate it. Whereas, FOPI really doesn't go down to that level for keyword filtering. It does more of the actual message body and not necessarily the attachment type of detail. So that's probably the biggest detail in the differences between the different offerings between FPE and FOPI. All right. So now we've talked a lot about FPE, FOPI, FPSP, and we understand the 5-engine versus the 3-engine thing. Here's one bit of news from abtest.org, and this basically kind of summarizes what the impact is by going with a vendor that provides multiple engine capability versus the vendors are only applying or providing one particular engine. You had a question?
So there's a setting for that. If you have it scanned out in the cloud, we could rescan it when you come on premise, but there's a setting to say respect the scanning flag from the service.
Yeah, and we'll show you that capability in the demo. Okay, so as we can see here, the response times for Forefront from a 5-engine or a 3-engine perspective is just tremendous versus some of the other vendors that abtest.org evaluated. So that's pretty significant. In addition, if we take a look at protection from malware and the overall protection in depth and so forth, with the changes that we've made to FPE 2010, we have over a 99% spam detection rate, right? With the 5 engines capabilities that we have, or the 3-engine capabilities in FOPI, we're averaging around 38 times faster detections. And then you apply the automatic updates to that, you're pretty much getting protected across the board, and that's where the comprehensive protection comes into play. So that's the end of the overview. Is there any questions before we go into secure messaging? The which one? Link. Oh, Link. Yeah. So Link is the protection for Link is going to be coming out. So we don't have an official product for Link support yet, but that's probably why a 2010 version of Forefront Security for OCS hasn't been revved yet, because of the push to go ahead and make sure that we have a product soon for Link. All right. So let's go into secure messaging. We actually have 2 products that are available to handle this particular solution for Microsoft. FPE, as we talked about, on-premise, anti-spam, anti-malware filtering capabilities, and FOPI as well, which is basically our hosted version. So I think I beat that to death in the first few slides. What I didn't do is provide external commentary from analysts on what they thought about our email hygiene. All right. So this is what this slide does. So Gartner actually puts out a Magic Quadrant for secure email solutions, email gateways, and they actually have Microsoft in the 4th quadrant. All right. So this is pretty big news, and why is it big news? Because Microsoft has been putting time, effort, money, resources into protection probably for the last 5+ years, pretty hard, right? It wants to be, a serious player. It wants to be a leading player in this particular space. This is kind of validation that it's seen as being that player. And Microsoft understands that it needs to provide protection for their particular workloads, but it understands that in doing so, they need to be one of the leading providers for security in the business. So the first piece is the horizontal axis, which says, hey, Microsoft understands the workloads, understands what needs to be protected from them. They can go ahead and move forward with the right technologies given the changes in the space. And then the vertical axis is more around, well, given a wonderful strategy or a vision or a roadmap, can Microsoft actually execute on it? And the belief is that Microsoft has enough resources, enough technical knowledge to be able to do that as well. So it's really reaffirming Microsoft's direction in the protection space, which has been great validation for us. In addition, so I try to emphasize the spam stuff, and you guys didn't believe me, and so I said, let me throw the slide in real quick to make sure that whatever I said they really take to heart, and that I provide them with some real concrete data. So here it is. We got certified by Westco Labs for premium anti-spam. This is big, above 99% spam catch rate. Fantastic, right? In addition, the VB continuous live spam catch. This is basically a 6-month view as to what we've been doing, against this particular metric. Over 99%, all 6 times. So that's based on the improved anti-spam technology that's been introduced into FPE 2010. If we take a look at a single, a snapshot from that, from VB spam, we have in July of 2010, we detected 99.96% of spam in that time frame, with a 0% false positive rate. And this was the culmination of having the highest combination score for 3 consecutive months with this particular evaluation. So a lot of good details from external analysts on what's happening with our spam solution and making the right moves to make that happen. So now we're looking at the actual on-premise deployment for Exchange 2010. Really, the key takeaway from this particular diagram is where can we actually leverage forefront protection for Exchange. So as you can see, there's little check boxes, right? You have the edge server, you have the hub transport server, and you have the mailbox server. What's not shown here, since this is an enterprise deployment, is that for small and medium businesses, you also have a hub mailbox server that is very commonly used for small to medium organizations. We also protect that, and we protect it in such a way that we kind of go ahead and leverage resources, so you don't have like 2 full installations of everything on one box that is going to cover your hub and your mailbox capabilities. All right, so this is kind of another example of protection, defense in depth. Real quick, we'll talk a little bit about the FPE anti-spam. I talked a lot about it before, but there's 4 pieces of information I'd like to communicate on this slide. 1, connection filtering. Big, updates, aggregated RBL data with internal, external vendors. That includes the FOPI information that we go ahead and leverage as well. Excellent. Protocol filtering, big addition there. Backscattering. Content filtering, again, big addition there. CloudMark engine. And in addition, streamlining the SCLs that you have a much clearer picture of what's suspects spam and actual spam. And then finally, down at the very bottom is the hybrid model. So Microsoft is probably one of the few companies that can provide a value prop from a hybrid perspective. So we have a large Exchange install base, and what does that mean? If they want to go to the cloud, sometimes it's not very easy, or if they want to go to the cloud, how do they go ahead and maintain consistency between their on-premise protection settings and their in-the-cloud protection settings? So the hybrid model was a first step into, going down that path, which was that, hey, we understand you want to go ahead and make sure that your organization is protected with the same rules, whether that is protected in the cloud or whether that's protected on-premise. So if you happen to update that on-premise, we'll go ahead and synchronize that within the cloud, right? So nice offering. It's the first step into going ahead and basically realizing, a full protection given one set of, protection settings, whether you're, on-premise or in the cloud. Another item that often comes up is how do you deal with container files, or how does filtering actually work within FPE? And so this example is where you have an email coming in that has an attachment that's a container. This container has 4 different document types in it: executable, doc, VMP, and a JPEG file. So we hit a rule within the FPE console that says, hey, I don't want to let any executables in my organization. So it goes ahead and hits it, pulls it out, quarantines the executable file, replaces that container, augments the container with a customized deletion text, and then basically goes ahead and moves the email forward onto its recipients. So pretty nice, and if the user wanted to, they would recognize, this has been detected as something that doesn't match policy. We removed it. We put it in quarantine. You can either go ahead and access it via the administrator or some other mechanism, but the policy doesn't allow for us to let executables in. All right. So now we're at the time where we're going to do a little demo of FPE. All right. So any questions up to this point? Yes, I have a slide that we're going to go through. You're going to see that FOPI and FPE, in addition to FPEs, are part of the Enterprise CAL. In addition, you're going to also see there's a Forefront security CAL that's available, and then there's I think one other Microsoft server security CAL that all that stuff gets rolled into as well. So you'll be able to see how those align to what's being available. All right. How many people have actually seen? Right. Yeah. I think we're. How many people have actually seen FPE 2010 Management Console? Just one?
2.
2? We did so much work on this console. Come on.
Oh, that's pretty good. You only got 12 people.
Yeah, I know. 2 out of 12, right? So here's the story with this, right? So we basically upgraded the 2007 console to 2010, and we basically rethought about a lot of things that we thought the administrator was. We had a lot of conversations with a lot of user groups in the TAP program, a lot of feedback, and we tried to make something that we thought was really going to hit the mark. So I think the team that did this, was pretty proud of the end product that they released when they put this together. So I'm going to go through it, and you can ask questions, but some of it's going to be fairly quick because I don't have too much time to spend going through all the aspects of it. So the first thing you see here is really the dashboard. This dashboard was created for you to get a glimpse of the health of your overall server. So this is server-based, so it's representing the health of your server. So if you take a look at the scan jobs, what this really means is that, hey, I'm hooked into my workloads, depending upon the server that I'm supporting, whether that's transport in real time, there's 2 hooks that need to be supported for my scan jobs to be operational, all right? And then I have the services. I need to have, notification service up. I need to have my config service up. I need to have basic infrastructure that allows me to go ahead and do my job. I have the engines. We have another critical component that the signatures need to be updated. The engines need to be, fairly consistent. So because that's going to provide us the ability to do the malware detection that that your PAN is for. And then we have the licensing, which is another important aspect because you want your licensing to be in policy. If not, you're going to have degraded functionality all the way to where the engines are not going to go ahead and accept any more updates, right? So you want to make sure the whole situation is clear and clean, and this gives you a one-stop glance to say, hey, everything looks pretty good. If not, you can drill into it. In this particular case, we don't have this VM hooked into the internet, so all of our engines are not updating. And as you can see, pretty easy. Here's my engines. Here's the engine version. Here's the definition version. And here's the last time it's been updated and the last time it checked to fail. Sorry, my allergies are bugging me today. I'm about ready to sneeze and I don't want to. And if you go into the details of each individual area here, you can actually see, the status of any given item that's associated with that, with this area. The gray ones mean that, the services haven't been activated or they're really not applicable to be monitoring at the current time. All right. The other piece of this dashboard is really how well is this server, what's this server really doing? I need to get validation that the server is really doing something that, and this provides visibility into what is happening on the server. So it gives you a nice visual representation of your spam that's being blocked on the server. It'll also give you a nice representation of what's happening with, scanning, how many pieces of mail have been detected as malware, file filtered, keyword filtered, different things like that. So at a glance, it gives you some pretty good information on, what's happening with your system. As we see, this left pane here is the main navigation pane. There's three, top-level navigation areas. The one that we're in is monitoring, and that's really meant for monitoring information, management of quarantine, and incidents. The bottom one is really meant to go ahead and provide you the ability to update, particular protection settings that we provide. So to go ahead and close out, some of the high-level features of monitoring, you can drill into, say, example, the malware details, and based off of where it's being scanned, you can get particular information about what's actually happened to some of the messages. How many messages have been scanned? How many message parts have been deleted? How many things have been quarantined? It'll give you a pretty good idea for not only malware, but for spam and filtering as well. In addition, we provide incident and quarantine capabilities for this particular server. They behave fairly similarly. The difference is that if you have something selected, you're going to be able to get some more detailed information on this. If you want to go ahead and actually have something saved or delivered or deleted, you can right-click on that entry to go ahead and have it. You can basically save stuff out to a CSV file. There's a lot of different things that you can do. You can add additional columns to your view if you needed to sort on different things. The capabilities are there to have fully functional quarantine management. So the top level configuration items that are exposed at this level are notifications, and this is pretty much, I have a virus that's been found. Well, anytime I find a virus, because especially since there's such a small number of viruses, I'd like to be notified, right? To make sure that there's not some outbreak going on and some zero-day attack that we need to go ahead and start running scheduled scans for or whatever. So I can enable this notification. Maybe if I can enable this notification, and then go ahead and edit this notification, and put some detailed information on what I really need to know about this. From quarantine, this is a key item here. So for quarantine and incidents, you can basically set your retention policy. But in addition to that, if you have something in quarantine that's been caught by a filter, if you go ahead and release it to the intended recipients, it won't go ahead and rescan an item that has been, already detected as being caught by a filter. All right?
It will rescan for viruses, just not additional filters you put on top.
Right. So there's no way, even if you've caught something and you've quarantined a virus, that you're going to get that virus, even if you wanted to deliver it out to the target recipient. So unless you go ahead and disable the virus scanning capabilities that are on the hubs and everything, that's the only way. But you can go ahead and either enforce different behavior. So in this case, the scenario is like this. I am testing out some new filters, and I want to make sure that they're behaving correctly. So I go ahead and deploy these filters, say, I've caught something that I really didn't want to catch. Let me go ahead and modify my filter, and then I also want to go ahead and make sure that those filters are going to be accurate and this is not going to be caught again. So he then goes ahead and releases it, delivers it, and he goes ahead and gets the satisfaction that they're making the right choices with the specification of the filtering. So that's kind of monitoring. So now we're going to go to policy management. And kind of what I want to do in policy management are probably two main things. The first is taking an example of one of the anti-malware settings and basically walking through it real quick. So here you have settings that you can enable antivirus and anti-spyware, which also mean you can disable it. By default, these things are enabled. One of the questions that we get, very often and that I've provided, TechNet articles for is the performance given the different number of engines that we utilize as well as the different options on what we provide. In this particular case, the default setting is to go ahead and scan with a subset of the engines that are available. So we have 5 engines by default. What that means is that if one engine out of the 5 is being updated because the engine version needs to be updated or the definitions need to be updated, then we'll use the 4 that are currently available as that message came in. Otherwise, we'll use the general 4, whatever is really available to do the scanning. And you can also go ahead and say, hey, I want to stop mail flow if we do have an engine update, and I want to scan with all engines all the time. You can have that option. There's going to be some performance impact based off what you go ahead and choose. What's nice about this is that we've also introduced something easy for the user. Number one, you have a default that I think works great. Scan with all available engines that are there. But you also have intelligent engine management. All right. So intelligent engine management is really all about being able to, let the engines or let your policy dictate what engines you should scan with, and then automatically have them updated to protect your environment. So here we have engine management, set to automatic, and it basically controls, says, hey, for all these different, scanning locations, whether that's on our transport, our real time, whether we're doing a scheduled scan or an on-demand scan, all the engines are available. All right. And we're going to go ahead and take care of all the updates. You shouldn't have to worry about anything. We'll make the right call when it comes to being able to scan and protect your environment. You also can go ahead and override that. So it's not that that's something that you can't override. See, I didn't want to go ahead and use Kaspersky. I said, Kaspersky, man, I've looked at the details there, and it looks like it's really hogging up a lot of resources. So preferably, I'd like to go ahead and disable it across the board, which you can actually do, and then you're basically overriding the default capabilities. All right? The other thing I wanted to show you is that we did talk about the hybrid case, right? The hybrid case of what's actually happening between FPE and FOPI. So within the FPE console itself, you can go into online protection and configure this. And here you'd basically have to set up your credentials, your gateway information to be able to communicate with FOPI. So you guys basically establish a trust relationship between this particular FPE server and FOPI. Then you have the option to say, hey, I know that FOPI is going to quarantine stuff. Well, I can still let it quarantine there, or I can go ahead and choose to say, I'd rather manage my quarantine from my on-premises product, in which it'll go ahead and update the configuration to also send the quarantine data into your on-premise quarantine store. The data center IP addresses can also be obtained, and this is really, you go ahead and get the IP, your data center IP addresses. This is to go ahead and set up your send and receive connectors from your Exchange, usually your Edge or your Hub servers, to make sure you have a trusted relationship between FOPI and Exchange. Once this is done, the gentleman had a question before regarding, are you guys scanning all this stuff even in the hybrid case? You have the capabilities in the Advanced Options tab. If I don't pass it, yeah, here we go. Rescan messages already scanned by Forefront Online Protection for Exchange, right? So you can choose to rescan those. By default, you're not going to go ahead and rescan those. And you can basically, rescan the viruses that are already done. So you can have the online protection, scan everything, and then you can also have, your on-premises protection do it too. So it seems like a little overkill for me, but maybe that's the policy of some organizations, right? We don't necessarily dictate that. So that's kind of FPE demo in a nutshell. Any questions there before we move on? All right, great. So where are we at here? Okay, now we're going to talk about FOPI. All right, so we covered FPE pretty much in depth, and now we're going to, talk a little about FOPI. So the FOPI provides the core capabilities. So FOPI, in the cloud, email hygiene, right? So FPE and FOPI basically do it fairly dissimilar ways. It's still the same, steps that have to be done. You have your connection filtering, right? So it has to go through the IP reputation. Are we getting this from a trusted source? Your antivirus, right? Once we get it from a trusted source, we're going to leverage our engines and make sure that it's clean. Anti-spam. What are we using? In the FOPI's case, they go ahead and use a regex or custom anti-spam technology. Is it free of anti-spam with a very low amount of false positives? And then policy. Policy is pretty big and kind of probably one of the bigger differentiators between FPE and FOPI. You can actually put together regex expressions in FOPI to create, a DLP, ILP type of solution that you would, enhance for your organization, right? So there's a lot of things that can be done. That's a very powerful concept that is leverageable within FOPI today. So implementation scenarios. We briefly talked about some implementation scenarios before, specifically about Exchange Online. But this is basically to drive it home. So every Exchange Online customer, and there's a lot of different BPOS SKUs that support different types of customers, from large to medium to federal to educational and so forth, are really leveraging the FOPI email hygiene capabilities that exist in the cloud today. Okay? So that's pretty big. So there's a lot of traffic that is currently going through FOPI. And FOPI, if you look at it from a data center or a cloud service, this is a fairly big, installation. So you have many data centers that are, have a primary and a backup data center located, geographically across the world. All right, you have some in the United States, you have some in Asia, you have some in Europe. It's a big deal because people have business critical needs that they cannot afford to lose mail. Bottom line, right? And so you have a lot of availability and thought processes that have went into designing those capabilities. And it's not only probably for availability, but some countries, some organizations within countries have additional requirements that prevent them from having emails sent out of their country boundaries. So in order to solve that, we need to have a locally fault-tolerant solution as well. So, and the FOPI service does provide 5 nines uptime capability, and as we're going to see, in a couple slides when we talk about the architecture, it actually has spooling capability. So even if your relay that is accepting the email goes down, you actually still have the capability to make sure that mail is not lost, and that'll be retransmitted every 20 minutes. All right? So that's the O365 integration, the standalone. We've talked about it before. You have the standalone where you can go ahead and use FOPI in the cloud, have on-premises capabilities to do your mailbox hosting. That can be Exchange. It can be non-Exchange. You can be forwarding it to another service to provide data leakage protection, for all we know, right? It's not tied to the workload that's specific to Exchange or Microsoft, okay? So you have that capability, but if you do have it, we have a tighter integration that allows you to go ahead and be consistent across your cloud and your on-premise environments. Hybrid protection, I gave you an idea of what that was all about. And then, I talk about EDU here, and this is purely about probably before this past year, we provided, end-to-end capabilities for EDU customers that we would host their mailboxes and so forth. But we didn't go ahead and provide them the capability to use Admin Center to tweak the FOPI portion of email hygiene that was associated with that BPOS customer. We're making a change, and so pretty much every customer, or almost every customer, by the time this calendar year is finished, will have the capability to actually augment their filtering protection settings via FOPI. All right? So this is the FOPI architecture, I would say, and we'll go through a couple of really quick scenarios. Yeah, it looks like we have enough time. So we have email coming in from the internet, and it's going to hit the edge blocking of FOPI. So once it passes the edge blocking of FOPI, that's when your antivirus kicks in. That's when your policy kicks in, your anti-spam, and again, if you happen to have a relay that's down, it'll basically your automatic spooling. So what you see in addition to this is, when it does the policy, is you can set up policy rules to actually enforce encryption. So encryption is, basically looked at as 2 different ways. So you have TLS encryption, which is basically your channel is encrypted from point A to point B that you're sending it to, right? And that's kind of, network level encryption. And then you have your application level encryption that says, I have an email, I'm going to go ahead and encrypt it. I don't care how you send it out, over what channels or everything. And then someone's going to, have to go ahead and have the key to unencrypt the information to be able to obtain it. And so we do provide Exchange-hosted encryption, which is, an agreement with a third party called Voltage that does provide this capability for us. All right. As is seen from the middle screen there, the admin console, is part of FOPI, and we do have the capabilities to specify end user quarantine. Once this information, passes through FOPI, it's been filtered, it goes into your corporate network, it then gets delivered. The other key piece of information here is you do have the capability to say, hey, I want to go ahead and configure, the users to automatically sync with my on-premise AD, right? So you can run a directory sync tool that automatically runs and keeps your users updated and with your domains. Or you can purely use Admin Center to manually update these as you go. So you get to choose how you want to go ahead and manage your users and keep those up to date between your on-premise environment and your cloud filtering capabilities. All right. If a email is sent from your internal to your organization going outbound, it'll hit FOPI. It'll do everything the same. It won't do the IP reputation stuff, of course, because they believe you're a trusted customer. But it will go ahead and provide outbound spam capabilities. So I might have briefly covered this before, but that's a pretty big, differentiation between what FPE provides. FPE provides no outbound spam capabilities, all right? FOPI does. And if you look at the EDU case or other cases that host different folks, it's a pretty big user scenario for people, right? In the case, they don't want to be on the blacklist of any RBL. Well, if their CEO wants to send an email, they don't want it being delivered into someone's junk mailbox because some external RBL has defined that address that is we're receiving an email from is doesn't have a high reputation score. All right, so this prevents those external EDU members from actually spamming, whatever you have. EDU is probably the most offending case, but there could be a lot of different scenarios that this happens. So you don't go ahead and take a hit with outgoing spam at that particular point. All right. This is a simplified rendition of the hybrid model. Again, forefront protection will handle the filtering. It'll then be transitioned over to the on-premise installation. You have the capabilities to say if you want to rescan it or not again, and you have the capabilities to specify if you want to go ahead and make sure that the synchronization takes place between on-prem and in the cloud. So now we're going to go through the FOPI demo. And I'll make sure I only, oh, no, we're doing it right. I'll make sure I don't take up all the time, Mitch. So my guess is that this is timed out. So this is kind of a demo customer that's hitting the live side. It's a kind of demo thing. So, all right, so looks good. So I just logged in as a customer to go ahead and manage my FOPI organization. All right. What I first see, this is basically the landing page that you're going to see. You're going to see your company report on the left, with some associated graphs about what's actually happening. Your virus count looks like we've got a spike here on 5.5. Some detailed information, which is some nice information. And then you can actually see how your company's doing with regards to the aggregated customers that FOPI services today. And so that's what this network report is. It's saying, here's a list of everything and here's what we're doing. So if we just take a look at one instance, we are filtering about, a little over 89% spam, in an aggregate fashion for all of the FOPI services. And for my company, I actually have a higher spam percentage rate, 93 or 90, a little over 93%. So it's kind of nice. It provides you some visual capabilities on what's happening in your service. In addition, it will go ahead and provide you a lot of links for news updates or resources that you may need. In this particular case, there's a lot of great training information on how to leverage Admin Center, how to get more training, how to take a look at solving different scenarios or common scenarios that people run into. If you have over 1,000 seats that you're moving from on-premise into FOPI, we'll go ahead and assign a personal liaison that'll help you through this, help you for 90 days, get it all set up. So we're trying to facilitate, an easy transition to making sure that, adoption of FOPI, continues to be strong moving forward.
One thing I wanted to point out on here, you see in the upper right-hand corner, it says spam filtered. Right now, that's at 89%. Typically, we see that in the 90 to 95%. That means 95% of all the email on the internet is spam. So the further out on your edge you can block that, the better it is for your internal system resources.
All right. So now we're going to go into the administration. Maybe. Okay. So before I go ahead and talk to some items on this page, it's important to know that there's 3 scoping levels that FOPI recognizes. All right, the first is a reseller. So if we were a reseller and we were to log in and go to the administration, we would be presented with a list of companies that we resell to, all right, because we can actually go ahead and modify the services that they're offering or configure their environment for them if need be, all right? So that's not shown here, but that gives you an idea. There is a different view that's available when a reseller comes up to do company management, all right? But they're still going to click on a company, and then they're going to be provided the view that we just landed on, which is really a company scoped view, all right? From a company scope view, a company has potentially many domains that it manages. So then you have a domain particular scoping, which will take precedence, those particular settings over a company-based scoping, all right? So, so over here to the left, company settings, we have 2 particular subscription service for this account. The first one is the FOPI protection that pretty much you must have. I'm not sure if there's an instance where you don't have that, then you have another service. And then we have Exchange-hosted archiving. So you can have Exchange-hosted encryption as well. In this particular case, we have archiving. Over here, you get to specify your IP addresses that are associated with your outbound relay. So once something's been scanned, where should those be delivered to? And they will be delivered in round-robin fashion or based off of your MX priority and so forth. One of the big introductions for 10.2, which was probably 4 months ago, was connectors, all right? And so connectors, there's inbound connectors and outbound connectors. If you're familiar with Exchange, Exchange on a server basis has remote and accepted domains, but it has send and receive connectors that kind of do a similar functionality to what's being presented in the inbound and outbound connectors. So for this particular case, and I would say that there's there's probably several different use cases around connectors, but probably a couple of the more common ones are that I have a company that I want to go, I trust, but I want to make sure that we continually have a secure channel for all our email transactions between each other, right? So my company in the demo.com, I want to make sure any email that we exchange, uses TLS, right? So I set this up, and we go ahead and make that happen. In addition, so I have something inbound. Say I have a trusted partner. Well, the trusted partner, let some hooligans in to run their organization for a while, and all of a sudden, they're on the blacklist for all these IP reputation span lists, right? Well, I do trust them. I do trust the stuff they got. I know they got rid of all the hooligans. I'm going to set up this inbound connector so that it doesn't have to necessarily use TLS. I can opportunistically use TLS, but the big thing is I can go ahead and set up to say, hey, I don't want connections from this particular company to be filtered by IP reputation. So it comes in, I still want it filtered for spam and policy rules and so forth, but it doesn't need to be filtered for IP reputation. So you can get to that granularity of specifying inbound and outbound connectors to control your mail flow and control your trusted relationships with different domains and companies. All right. All right. So let's go to domains. So here we're going to look at my favorite domain, and we're going to see that we don't have any inbound or outbound connectors. So by default, this domain will inherit the inbound and outbound connectors that have been specified for the company. All right? Conversely, we have specified a particular set, which is the test profile 2, of IP addresses that we want incoming email for this particular domain to be routed to. So we now specify a subset of all the company's IP addresses to basically use that round-robin fashion to go ahead and send that out to the processing site. All right. In addition, we've now specified 3 additional IP addresses for which we will accept mail for this domain to go ahead and process it. All right. That means that Mitch is sending it through a relay. It goes through that relay. We recognize that it's from this domain. We do want to go ahead and filter it. We filter it for outbound spam, outbound malware, and then we basically deliver it to the internet. All right. What's nice is that in this instance, and we talked about this before, you have the capabilities to specify, user access to spam quarantine and digest that user will receive. So this is all managed as part of FOPI. So here we can basically say, hey, we do want to allow those to use it. I didn't show you before, but on the company side, you can actually set that up and then basically go ahead and define your password policy. So when they do initially log in to go ahead and manage their quarantine, they'll have to change their policy, and it has to meet your company's specific needs. And then the other thing I wanted to show you here is the spam quarantine digest can be modified. So you can send, this is a textual email, but you can modify it from 3 to 14 days so that users get notified of what information is in their quarantine store for them. All right, so pretty nice. So hey, it's a way to say you should basically log in and take a look at this stuff, because there is some spam that has been caught that was directed towards you. Users, we talked a little bit about the users before, and this is how you go ahead and I guess the big thing is that from a domain perspective, you'll see that you can set up how you go ahead and align the users from your on-premise system into that domain, or for that domain specifically. You can use DirSync to do it, or you can do it manually. And here's where you would go ahead and add users, or basically do user management for that particular domain.
So the DirSync is a tool that you run locally, which will actually keep your Active Directory in sync with FOPI in the cloud. So you don't have to continually go back and forth and add users in both places.
I have to show you
Here's a question.
go on.
Directory Sync tool.
Yes.
It's a download from the FOPI service. So it's something that you would download and install locally, and it would keep your Active Directory in sync with the user accounts up in FOPI.
Right, so you install it in your on-premise environment. It'll go ahead and hit AD and basically do all the ferrying of the user information into FOPI land. All right. So I did, I did tell you guys about this cool regex stuff, right? So I think I'm kind of like obligated to show you at least what a policy rule might look like in FOPI, because here you can go down and you can put the scope, the traffic, is it inbound, outbound, what do I want to do with it? But what I was getting at is that, say I was trying to domain matches, whatever, say I wanted to do something very complicated in my expression, I could go ahead and specify that I wanted to actually use a regex expression to define a matching of domains or matching of email addresses or what have you, right? Recipient stuff. Any of the information that I can put in here can be specified in a regex syntax to really define to the nth degree how you want your policy to be defined, right? Very robust capabilities when it comes to the options that you have for allowing customized filtering.
So the other thing I want to talk about here is you can define any rule just as Frank spoke about. And for any rule, you can define what type of action you want to take. So you might want to take a reject action, or you can actually have an allow or quarantine, redirect, or deliver with a BCC. If we had encryption enabled, you'd have the ability to encrypt any message that met that particular policy. So it's very flexible.
Yeah. So before we leave the FOPI demo, I definitely wanted to show you a couple things. I guess I'll show you these, and then maybe we'll see if this fails or not. But let me see. So tools-wise, right? So here you have some tracing capabilities. So someone came to you and says, what happened to the email that this guy from Microsoft sent me? I don't know who sent me it, but I know this guy from Microsoft sent me it, and I never received it. So I go ahead and say that this guy from Microsoft sent it to me. I don't know when he sent it, sometime in May, supposedly. And I know he sent it to me because I'm Mary. And so hopefully something pops up. I don't know what actually happened. And look, I see a couple guys, from Microsoft that sent me something. I now know that it passed filtering and it's been archived, right? So it'll trace what's actually happened to the mail. Was it detected as malware and quarantine? Did it get delivered to you and you basically deleted it? In this particular case, it's been archived. There's been an issue with actually getting delivered to your mailbox because, maybe it's been down or something. But this gives you an idea of what's going on in your system for a particular mail message. How long is the footprint lie around for being able to track where the mail came? I'm not sure about that. I don't know what the retention policy is for this particular data that's leveraged for message tracking. So quarantine, you can basically specify a retention policy for quarantine in the configuration, yeah. My guess is that there is, but it'll probably show you. If you wanted to exceed a maximum of, I think, 365 days, they probably push you more to an archiving solution, right? So that's an idea of and the other thing is audit trail, right? I can go in and take a look at everything that's been done, who actually when I last logged in, what's happened, to updates to my policy, different things like that. So it's pretty cool with regards to that. And then we're running a little bit short of time, but what you can also do is that you can access your quarantine mail as well as your archive information directly from the FOPI console. So this is all kind of really integrated into the whole admin experience, right? All right, so that's basically and so here's an idea. You have a pretty similar, OWA type of relationship for managing your junk mail and so forth. So I think that's it for the FOPI demo. Any questions, sir? All right. Secure collaboration. So we're not going to go through a demo of FPSP since it's very similar to the demo that we walked through for FPE. The only difference is that you have a different workload, but pretty much the navigation model and all the key capabilities that are provided there in FPE are provided, similarly in the FPSP. The key thing here is that forefront protection actually resides on the web front end. So we go ahead and analyze the downloads and uploads. This next picture actually, shows a better view of it. If customers doing some uploads and downloads, we hook into the VS API hook. We do our thing there, which consists of antivirus scanning, anti-spyware scanning, keyword filtering, file filtering, and quarantine. Once it's done, passes that, it gets shoved off into the SharePoint database. So the final piece is probably the management experience. So we have two real management options today. One is the standalone management, which is the management console, which is FPE that we gave you before. And the next is really the multi-management capabilities. So one is, so we do provide a management console. Mitch is going to go ahead and walk through a demo of it. And we also provide a script kit to go ahead and do the multi-node management. So I'm going to switch it over to Mitch. He's going to do a little demo, which will basically capture the essence of the remaining slides for FPSMC.
Okay, so as Frank spoke about, the FPE product and the FPSP product each have their own individual console. If you have multiple servers, multiple FPE servers, you can go ahead and manage them separately. So today, without a console, you'd have to go make your settings on your one server and then go ahead and make similar settings on the other server. So what we came out with is an update to our protection management console that allows you to manage both your multiple FPE servers as well as FPSP servers from one central location. So the first page we come to is our at-a-glance page, and this gives you a 24-hour summary of the detections that have happened in your environment. So here we're looking at our Exchange spam statistics. So this tells you the amount of spam that's come in over the last 24 hours. Over here we're showing the Exchange incidents, so this includes malware and file filters. And down here, this is your SharePoint servers. There's an aggregate for all of your SharePoint servers across your environment. And this shows the amount of malware, file filters, and keyword filters that were detected. Under here is our new servers tab. So if you had any new servers in your environment, they would come up listed here. The FPSMC has the ability to read into Active Directory. So any of your products that are domain joined, those would be listed here. We'd actually go out and read the Active Directory marker for those products and then would display them here. We also have the ability to manage non-domain joined machines. So your Exchange edges or your SharePoint edges that are running out behind you or your firewall, you can manage those as well. It's just that you would need to type in the fully qualified domain name for those. So under user management, in this particular instance, when you install FPSMC, it's the installation administrator that has access to the console. You can go ahead and add additional users that are in your domain. You come under here, add users. And you can add any users in your domain. They need to be of an administrator type, so they need to be an Exchange administrator or a box administrator in order to have access to the FPSMC console. Under server management, so I have two servers deployed in my test environment here. I have Madrid, which is our Exchange server, and I have Seattle, which is a SharePoint server. So these servers already exist. I've already gone ahead and deployed the agent to those. So for any managed server, you actually have to deploy a small agent, and we'll actually walk through doing that right now. So if I want to add a new server, I could come out, I could find any new servers in my environment. Here I'll select Sydney. And here I'll just assign it to my default group for now. Now Sydney is in my list, but in order for me to start managing it, I actually need to deploy an agent to it. So under here I click on Deploy Agent. I type in my credentials. And now the agent is being deployed to that server in the background. We actually use Windows Communication Foundation, and we'll go out and install the agent on the remote machine. And that'll give us the ability to not only do management, but do reporting and other functionality that we have. In order to view the status of the agent, you can come here and look at the notification logs, and this will actually tell you the deployment status of the agents. Next, we'll talk quickly about group management. So by default, as you saw when I added Sydney, it went into the default group. You can actually go here and add server groups. So let's say I want all of my Exchange edges to be managed with one policy, and I want all of my hub servers to be managed with a different policy. You could create two different groups, and then you could assign different types of policies to each of those groups. So here, I'm just going to quickly create an Exchange Edge group. Okay, then I'll select my Exchange Edge group, and I'll assign servers to the group. So I'll take my Exchange server and assign it to the group. So now I have both a default group and an Exchange Edge group. I could create an Exchange Hub group. I could create a SharePoint group as well. Quickly, I'll go through some of the global configuration options. These are just setups for FPSMC. For FPSMC to go out and send notifications, it needs an SMTP server to go ahead and do that. This is some settings around the quarantine management and polling. FPSMC is a great solution if you don't want all of your Exchange machines or your SharePoint machines reaching out to the internet to get engine updates. You can use one FPSMC server to go out, pull the engine updates down, and then have all the other servers updated from your FPSMC server. So you'll save bandwidth, and you'll also provide a little protection for your Exchange servers and your internal servers from having to go out to the internet. Online protection, we have some very limited integrations between FPSMC and your online protection. It basically just provides you the ability to hyperlink out to those areas within your FOPI management solution. So there's not a direct integration between FPSMC and FOPI, but it's kind of a loose integration where it actually just lets you log into those different areas within there. As far as the quarantine, this provides a central quarantine. So if you have 5 Exchange servers, without a management console, you'd actually have to administer the quarantine on each of those Exchange servers. By using the management console, you can actually group those Exchange servers together and pull the quarantine into FPSMC. From here, you can manage the quarantine. If you want to release something, you can come over, you can say deliver, and it'll actually reach back out to that Exchange server and deliver the email. We have similar functionality on the SharePoint server. Since SharePoint can't actually email something, the options within SharePoint is just to restore the document to its original location in the SharePoint database. In order to do policy, you need to first create a policy. To create a policy, you'd go to your Exchange server, export the FPE settings into an XML file. You could take that XML file and then bring it over here. So I could give you a very quick demonstration of exporting the. So you come in, you open the Forefront management shell, that's the Forefront PowerShell, and you'd simply run an export command and pipe that to a text file. So this takes all of the Forefront settings and puts them into an XML file. Now what I'll do is I'll take that XML file, I'll copy it over to my FPSMC server, and I'll create a new package. I'll browse to that XML file, and I'll open it. And this basically creates me an FPE policy. Now what I can do is, for each of these setting groups that we have, so if you look in your FPE console, the settings are broken down into these little different buckets. So we have anti-malware settings, we have filtering settings. So if I want to only apply the anti-malware settings to all of my Exchange edges, I would select anti-malware settings. So all of those settings that I exported from that Exchange machine for anti-malware would now be part of this policy. I could select everything if I wanted, so my entire set. But typically what we would do is we'd select just a subset, so we'd have a certain set of engines running on your edge and a different set of settings for your hub. So you typically run your anti-spam out on your edge, and you'll just do AV filtering on your hub. So here I'll go ahead and select anti-malware settings and click OK. And now I have what we call a package. In order to distribute this package, I would just create a new job.
So I know we're running up against our time frame here, but we'll be done in a few minutes. So if you can bear with us, and then we'll have a closing statement before we're done.
So I've taken the package in, and now I can assign it to all my Exchange edges. And I could finish. And now I have the job available, and I could either run it now, or I can actually schedule the job to be run on a periodic basis. Signature redistribution jobs are very similar. You would actually just set up a signature redistribution job to run on a periodic basis as well. Schedule reports. So let me just quickly jump down to our reports. We have an incident detection report. Which gives you some overall statistics of the incidents that were detected in your network. So here you can see we have a nice pie chart explaining the breakdown of the different detection types, as well as a trending diagram. And below we have some details and some of the most common incidents that were found. We have reports for incidents. We have a similar report for spam. And we also have the engine definition report that'll tell you the different engine versions that are running on your servers. And here we already saw the notification logs, which basically tell you the activity of the agents that's happening on the servers. I know that was a very quick overview. Are there any questions about the management console?
Fantastic.
Okay.
All right, so let's wrap this baby up real quick. So I wanted to, I know we talked a little bit about, so Mitch covered a lot of this stuff. There was actually, he had a full dedicated presentation to FPSMC. And so if you didn't have a chance to attend, his particular presentation on FPSMC, which is the multi-node management, I'm sure there will be, these things are recorded and you should have access to them, offline. So if you want more detail or more specific information on FPSMC, look for Mitch Hall. He has a specific, session out there.
That
All right?
was SIM 333. 333.
So I think everybody's pretty familiar with the product list or the acronyms associated here. But what I wanted to leave you with is pretty much, what we talked a little bit about before. The key takeaways here is that a lot of this stuff is pretty much, in the case of FPSMC and the script kit, those are free downloads. But everything else, either covered by Enterprise Cal, Forefront Protection Suite, license, either one of those. And in some cases, it's actually covered by Exchange Server 2010 Enterprise Cal with services. So there's several ways that these things, you can even get them, off of an individual basis as well. So if that gives you an idea, of what, how you have access to those particular products. Other than that, I think we're done. Before we leave, I have a list of questions that I have some knickknacks that I want to give away for. But please go ahead and also, if you can, spend some time and put in some feedback at the portal for us for this presentation. And we'll take any other additional questions before I go ahead and start asking questions. How about that? All right, great.